just thought it was the worst call of the year. That's all.
We're not going to make promises, but I tell you this.
Yeah, I'm about to get wild. I know that. Let's get wild.
I don't answer anybody's question but yours. But you're an idiot. And really disloyal.
Very important question, Steve, to start off the podcast.
Sure.
How do you eat your Uncrustables?
Me or my 8-year-old?
Both.
Neither of us do, period. He doesn't like peanut butter and jelly, and I'm 42, 41. I don't know how old I am.
So Steve might not be as chronically online as all of us. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
I also have basically been living in a shack on a ski hill for the last 3 days, at least.
So for those who are chronically online like I am, you will know that in the interim that we had between our time with the Super Bowl happening last week, Donnie Freeman during the Virginia game was shown to be eating an Uncrustable. And I'm going to send this to Steve right now on our Slack because he needs to watch this video himself because I'm not going to be able to play it on here due to ESPN copyright. But I'm going to need you to watch that, Steve, and then watch how Donnie Freeman right now eats his Uncrustables. And I want you to determine if this is the way that you would eat an Uncrustable, which is to take the crust off the Uncrustable.
Okay. So, yeah. Wow. That's impressive.
So before these
that.
latest two wins for Syracuse, that and Kyan Anthony not playing a game were the two biggest stories in Syracuse basketball.
Yeah. It's amazing what, winning a game or two will do for you.
Yeah, incredible. Syracuse on a 2-game winning streak. When's the last time we've been able to say that in ACC play, let alone just in general?
I was going to say in general, it's been long enough. Yeah.
And Syracuse does it in two very, very interesting fashions. One of them surviving 2 power surges and playing with only dome auxiliary lights on in double overtime. And then a last-second buzzer beater by Nate Kings to take down SMU. Very, very interesting week of Syracuse men's basketball.
Yeah, that was Wednesday was a very, very strange game for many, many reasons. But I mean, if you'd had Syracuse Cal going to double overtime on your bingo cards somewhere at the beginning of the season, I would have told you were nuts. And
but
here
I
we are.
probably would have expected that at the same time as well.
Yeah, like it wouldn't have been too far out of the realm of possibility because we are Syracuse fans and, well, we love to embrace the stupid. But yeah, I can distinctly remember sitting here and wondering, is this game going to end? Like, not quite as much as that UConn 6 OT game, but it was just like, no, we're still playing. There's still basketball happening.
With limited power.
Yeah.
But, and also my favorite thing is because as you stated, you have child, you probably recognize the scoreboard that they used toward the end of that Syracuse Cal game because of all the power issues.
No.
Oh,
okay.
Again, Steve, not
again,
online like us. So they literally pulled out like the auxiliary scoreboard that, again, you probably see a lot of at youth basketball tournaments, I should say. And that it's really fun because of all the power surge things that happened during the game, it knocked out the main scoreboard and knocked out the ribbon banners where you would actually see the score in time. And so they had to put down the auxiliary scoreboard so that the coaches and players can actually know what the score in time was.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I think I know that guy behind the scoreboard too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was me trying to compose myself.
No, that's awesome. The fact that is, that's what got reverted to is just glorious. We couldn't have anything better than a 1990s Daktronics scoreboard.
Yeah. It was so interesting. A couple people noted this, but the vibe of that game just felt so interestingly awesome because you don't have like pretty much you don't have the flashing lights. The only like electronic things that are working
Yeah.
are somehow the shot clock and game clock on the actual baskets, and
Right.
somehow the electronics get worked into the you know to run the clocks and the scoreboard from the auxiliary scoreboard. We had power at the broadcast table as well, but and the lights. But other than that, so there wasn't anything working. So like none of the scoreboards were on, none of the ribbon boards were on. So it felt like naturally like just a natural basketball game, which
Right.
gave it a very interesting energy. And I actually ironically kind of loved that like for a moment.
Yeah, it's almost like a throwback type.
Exactly. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that had to have been. It was kind of odd on the TV, but like in person, I could see that being like a real cool thing to experience.
Yeah, because like again, for the longest time, also not even the PA was working.
Oh,
So,
okay. So it was like classic,
yeah, real,
high
real,
school gym. Like, yeah,
like it literally felt like high school gym, like, which
that's
was
awesome.
very, very interesting. Just a very interesting feeling.
That is amazing.
And then, of course, Syracuse follows that us with the SMU win. The Kings again, the hero, and Kings has definitely come on a bit more for Syracuse over these last couple of games.
Yep.
Drops to 27 points over Cal, and then only has 13 points here against SMU, but still, you know, comes up clutch and pretty efficient when he gets the opportunities.
Yeah.
And you're starting to finally see more of the Nate Kings that I think a lot of people were expecting to have at the beginning of the season.
It's kind of weird that he's rounding into form. George is looking more like a point guard. There's a couple other like pieces to the puzzle that are all kind of coming together right now or functioning more as we thought they would. And it's probably too little too late.
Yeah, unfortunately, probably is. We will see what happens with you know the game that is tomorrow because again, that Duke game is tomorrow.
Right.
For and for those who don't know, we record Sunday nights. So if you're listening, that Duke game's another 2 game turnaround, like Syracuse had with North Carolina.
Yeah.
So you play Blue Devils on Monday.
So this week basically holds any hope of any postseason in Syracuse's hands.
Absolutely. Because you have the 2 Carolina schools.
Yep. Or
Like,
the two Carolina schools that matter for making the postseason.
yes. I mean, technically, NC State's also a.
Yeah,
Technically, NC State was a
That's
quad
true.
1 game also. It would have been a quad 1 game anywhere. And we saw what happened with that.
Right.
NC State's going to be a tournament team, so.
Yep. But there's not another game against them on our schedule.
Nope.
So basically, for anyone who doesn't know, tomorrow we are at Cameron, playing at Cameron Indoor, 7 o'clock ESPN. Tomorrow, Monday, whatever the date is, the 16th. I don't know if I want to watch this game, Christian.
We will certainly see. It's interesting because Syracuse's next 4 games are all quad 1 games.
Yep.
4 of Syracuse's last 5 games to close out the regular season are quad 1 games.
Oh yeah, because the only one after that's Pitt.
Mm-hmm. Because you go at Duke, that's always going to be quad 1. You have UNC at home. We should talk about that a little bit because it gets a little bit interesting. This UNC game at home on Saturday. Then the next Saturday, Syracuse finally gets their week break in between ACC games late in the schedule. They play at Wake Forest, who right now is comfortably a quad 1 game on the road, sitting at 64 in the net. Remember, you have to be up to 75 in the net to be a quad 1 game on the road.
Yep.
And then at Louisville, and then Pitt.
Yeah. That's a way to close the season.
Yeah, because ironically, like yes, it's not likely, but those 2 wins actually keep you a little bit alive.
Right.
Like, yes, like you still have to run the table.
Right.
Absolutely. Like, but it does.
You know
But it
what?
can
You know what
start this,
Syracuse is going to do, Christian?
2021 NC State,
Which was that?
DJ Burns.
Okay.
That's going to be the funniest scenario that's going to happen.
Fair. I'm assuming that in the most Syracuse fashion,
They're going to lose the Pit.
yeah, they somehow roll the 4 games and lose the Pit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which, to be fair, as you alluded to, UNC almost did the other day.
Well, you again, because he's not online as much. Do you know about one of the main reasons why UNC is maybe struggling a little bit right now?
Maybe a star freshman is MIA.
Well, MIA for good reasons. MIA sometimes has negative connotations.
Fair.
But like, if you fracture your hand, like that's not necessarily because of you.
Valid reason.
MIA usually carries more negative connotations. Caleb Wilson for North Carolina is out indefinitely with a fractured hand and doesn't look like he'll be available for the Syracuse game when that comes up in a few days.
Yep, which I will actually be at.
The big thing for that game also is that this is not just in, a major game for ESPN. That North Carolina game's on ABC.
Yeah. Full-blown national.
Like full-blown Tier 1 national game.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, I didn't even know they still did.
Yeah, it's actually a very good point.
When I saw that on ABC, I was like, they still play games on ABC? Like, I always thought it was basically the CBS nooner, and that's it.
Yeah, Syracuse still has 2 more games on the CW, the at Wake Forest game and the Senior Day game on Pitt. Hopefully there shouldn't be any NASCAR racing to quickly get off the air.
So we have 2 games on ESPN and ABC, and then 2 games on the CW.
Yep, and then the Louisville game. And then the Louisville game is ACC Network, but that's your final 9:00 game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Wake Forest, potential quad 1 game, CW.
My favorite part about that Wake Forest game, 5:45.
I noticed that as you were saying, just like it's the most obscure tip time you could possibly come up with.
Close enough.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? We got to hit that like early bird special, get in before the dinner rush and hit there at 5:45.
So we've talked a lot about macro stuff and looking ahead. Let's actually look back a bit more at those 2 games that Syracuse has just won, Cal and SMU. Stephen, your opinion, watching those games, what was so different about quality of opponent is definitely one thing because you lose to North Carolina and UVA in devastating fashion, but basically getting blown out by both teams prior. And Cal and SMU, while SMU is good and Cal is decent, definitely not the same caliber as those 2 teams. What was different for Syracuse in these 2 games that allowed them to grit out wins? Because again, the Cal game goes to double overtime and Syracuse wins SMU on a buzzer beater after being down by 12 in the second half also.
I know one thing that Kevin has harped on multiple times is the old hockey line changes that we were doing. We saw a lot less of that. We saw Red actually sticking with people performing and not just subbing for subbing's sake. Like I don't want to accuse him of doing that, but that's sometimes at the beginning of the season it kind of felt like that. Like, oh, he's been in there a while, we just need to get him off. He was riding the hot hand. What was it? Last 16, Cayenne was in and Starling was on the bench against SMU.
Yeah, and Cayenne plays for 24 minutes against SMU, starting to play for only 18.
Right. So, they're riding what's working. And if that's what's working, then, stick with it. The Cal game, I was in and out enough of that I really couldn't give you a good analysis of that one. But yeah, I don't know. The team doesn't feel amazingly different, but there's enough like little tweaks that seem to have kind of come around. Anything you picked up
Definitely,
on?
yeah, definitely consistency is a a big thing. Um, and if it just feels like the, it's hard to, I think, put a true finger on it, but I
Yeah.
think that consistency thing is very very big. Um, and it's good to see that the players aren't, you know, for lack of a better term, quitting on the team.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was, ever concerned about that because everyone on this team feels like, they really, really support Red and really, really like the coach.
Yeah.
But it can be easy in some of these games when you're down by 12 to SMU and really not pulling away from a Cal team that, you could easily just, you know, pack in the bag a little bit.
Yeah.
But, this is a team that's shown some, great and excellent fight.
I'm curious, you know, I kind of touched on it earlier where you mentioned that Kings was coming into his own. I, it's almost like these players are starting to play a little within themselves and not try and overly push and then make more dumb mistakes than they should. And I don't know if that's a caliber of competition thing or if that's some sort of development that's kind of happened over the last couple of weeks.
It definitely feels like there's a lot less of what something that we've thought of internally a lot less of the why did you take that shot
Right.
type of possession.
The For lack of a better description, the me ball type
Yes.
possessions. Yeah.
hmm Like a lot, there is ISO ball here and there, but there is a lot less ISO ball, and there's a lot more considerate shot selection. Some of the shots aren't
Yeah.
falling, but like it feels like, it feels like it doesn't feel like you've taken the air out of the building because the shot didn't fall and it was a bad shot, and you're like, why did you take that shot?
Right. Well, and
The shot
even
selection also has felt like it's gotten better.
yes. And ball movement has gotten better. But the even when you're, iso ball isn't always a bad thing when it's used sparingly and people are willing to pass out of the iso ball situation and not just force it to the hoop. So, I don't know. Tomorrow is going to be a very, very big test as to whether this was something that the team, adjusted or whether, or whether it was more that or whether it was more level of competition type thing.
The biggest problem is that what you saw in UNC was what Caleb Wilson can do.
Yeah.
He's very, very talented. We all know Caleb Wilson is talented, but the big thing is that his size also plays into that factor as well. You don't see big men with that type of skill set that Caleb Wilson has.
Right.
And the scary part is that Cameron Boozer has a better skill set and is about the same size
Yep.
as Caleb Wilson, which is going to make whoever is tasked with guarding him very, very difficult. You would assume it'd be Donnie. And it feels like that's going to be a very, very long day for Donnie if he's drawing the primary cover on Cameron Boozer.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be. I mean, and then what do? You can't hedge Kyle.
No.
Like, and we're not playing we're not. I don't know. Does Red go to that 1-3-1 that he was kind of playing a little? Like, what do you do to mitigate that?
And it's interesting.
We don't have someone who can man up with Boozer.
Well, it's been interesting to see both games against Syracuse but both games against Cal and SMU.
Yeah.
Syracuse starts out in zone. They eventually go back to man, but they start out in the 2-3 zone. It feels like that's kind of backfired a little bit because against Cal, I think they did an okay job, but against SMU, Igotolu was just dominating them on the inside.
Yeah.
And it wasn't doing anything, so they had to go back to man.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a really strange problem to have right now.
So it'll be interesting to see how Syracuse basketball continues to get on. Hopefully, we'll have Andy joining us in a little bit. He said he might be able to join us on the podcast later today in terms of record time. We'll get some more thoughts from him if he's able to show up. As usual, we should shout out the women's team as well, who are continuing to roll, picking up a win over Clemson today, 68-64. That's a huge double-double from Sophie Burrows, 19 points and 16 boards from her.
Yeah, and did you guys touch on it last week?
But we weren't here last week because of
the Superb Owl. Yeah,
with Le Superb Owl. So unfortunately, Syracuse does lose to Louisville, one of those big quad one games that we were talking about. And Syracuse, again, like the men's team, shows some impressive fight. They have a horrific first quarter and win the second and third quarters before it just kind of dies down at the end of the fourth quarter, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, they going into the fourth quarter, it was what, a 6-point game, something like that.
Yeah,
it was pretty tight. And then, similar to the first quarter, Louisville just kind of pulled away. Actually, I want to say Syracuse only scored like maybe 5 points in the fourth quarter.
So Syracuse scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. They only scored. This was the big thing. They only scored 6 points in the first quarter, and all of those were on free throws, which meant that the stand and clap went into the second quarter.
Yeah, that's great. That touches close to my record for standing and clapping in the Dome, which was to the 7-minute mark of the first half against Pitt. Yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah, that was not a fun day. Speaking of Pitt, though, Syracuse rebounded from that with just blowing the doors off of Pitt women. So
yeah, kind of expected, especially if you've read national news. The state of the Pitt women's basketball team is unfortunately not great right now. So
no, but it's still good to see, that they'll bouncing back off a hard fought win. And then, eking it out against Clemson today. So right now, their only losses are to the top of the table.
Yeah, if I'm correct, they only have one quad 2 loss, no quad 3 or quad 4 losses. The quad 2 loss is to Virginia Tech at home. And that's like their biggest blemish on their resume. It's a 20-point loss at home to Virginia Tech. So
that was a 20-point loss. Damn.
Yeah. Not pretty.
Didn't show up to the Dome that day.
Yeah, it was a random bad loss. But their other 4 losses on the year are to quad 1 opponents.
Right.
And 3 of those 4 are to quad 1 opponents in the top 10. And the 4th one was an overtime loss, barely overtime loss to North Carolina, at North Carolina,
who is a ranked team.
Yeah, and North Carolina is 19 in the net.
Yep. So, they're playing good basketball. It's just putting it all together against one of these top teams.
That's the biggest hurdle that Syracuse has to get over right now on the women's side, is just picking up a win against those top tier teams.
Right. I mean, and they closed the season with NC State, Notre Dame, and who else? BC. So BC, they should be. Well, BC's BC.
And they motor raced BC at Conte the last time they played them.
Yep. So, I mean, Notre Dame is 29 in the net, right? And
yes. And NC State's 23 in the net.
Okay, so they're playing 2 teams that, by record, they match up approximate with. By net, they're slightly below, but I don't know. It almost feels like that kind of lacrosse thing where once you get out of a certain tier, the next 40 teams just kind of meld together.
Yeah, exactly. And if it does feel like Syracuse is in that bottom, that tier below the top contenders.
Right.
They're still going it feels like this is still going to be a tournament team. A lot can happen.
Yeah.
But like writing down the resume. That Clemson win is the big one that I think like almost cements their place into the tournament.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a strong contender for that. I mean, they prior to that they were, or I mean, I guess going into that game they were 38. Clemson was 40. You notch another solid quad one and go about your merry way.
Yeah, and Syracuse has been flirting around the 8 and 9 line in terms of protected bracketology. So that Clemson win will only help
Right.
push Syracuse up as well.
And if they can snag one of these next two, then they're sitting pretty.
Yeah, they're sitting very, very pretty if you snag one of these next two against NC State or Notre Dame.
Now, are they? I didn't check when I had the schedule up. Are they home or road for those?
So they are both on the road at NC State and at Notre Dame.
Okay.
So so very, very tough. They'll be at those home away buildings.
Yep.
The plus side is if you get those wins, those are guaranteed quad one wins.
Right.
And that basically, puts essentially the final nail in the coffin of into the tournament.
There you go. That's all we can look for.
Yeah. We should look at Jack's squad has been performing very, very well. And if you're looking for more basketball optimism in your life in Central New York, the women's team is the way to go.
Although Lemoyne, I believe, is number 2 in their conference.
Oh yes, indeed.
Well, were they NEC?
Yeah, NEC. It's a one bid league.
Yep.
No,
but not
no
bad from not being in D1 to
exactly
2 in the conference. So
Lemoyne in general is obviously their big thing is basketball. Obviously, so like you can tell they're putting resources in there, and the results have shown for it on both the men's and women's side.
Yeah.
Let's go to the event that attracted 10,000 plus people to the Dome this week on Friday.
Yep. I still wish I wasn't occupied at a Cub Scout banquet and was able to attend because we were all sitting there watching this on our phones during it.
You missed a raucous Dome atmosphere.
That's so because it was a doubleheader, I had gotten score updates from one of the people that was there, not realizing that they were still talking about the women's game. And I was like, holy God, how is that the final? Like, how did those offenses like not score any points? Lo and behold, that was the women's game.
Yeah, the women's game was definitely interesting. It's more so impressive on the women's score. Like, you might have been a little bit concerned about Syracuse women, considering their season opener where they only scored 5 goals against Maryland. That ends in a 9-5 loss to Maryland. And so I think a lot of people are concerned about a blowout when UNC came to the Dome. Again, UNC is the reigning undefeated national champions who just had a true freshman on their squad win the Tewaaraton last year. So
yeah, not bad.
So I think a lot of people are concerned that, this might not end well for Syracuse. Lo and behold, Syracuse leads after the first half, 6-5. And then just unfortunately for them, defense and turnovers kind of drop off in the fourth quarter. And UNC eventually just pulls away with some really good skill because their top end talent obviously is just up there,
above and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Big thing for the women, big thing for the women right now is that the graduation of Emma Ward shows that someone needs to be that quarterback X player for Syracuse. They only had 1 assist, as opposed to UNC having, I think it was 7 or 8. It was 8 at the end of the game. So 1 assist is not necessarily going to get it done, even though you do well to score 8 unassisted, which is impressive, but that can't be the be all end all as well.
Right. Yeah, and that it's rough opening the year 0-2 and then still having your next 2 games against ranked opponents.
Yeah, exactly. The women's schedule definitely not easy. First of all, you go to Stanford.
Yep.
And Stanford is just a model of consistency right now. That's a very, very consistent team. The Cardinal are, and then much like in women's basketball, the top end of women's lacrosse is very, very top heavy.
Yeah.
And so, like, while that is a number 18 Loyola team, it should match up a lot more evenly with Syracuse.
Yeah.
And Syracuse hasn't had as many problems with Loyola in the past.
No, but that's also only that's a short turn on a Friday in California to a Tuesday here at the Dome.
Yeah, it is indeed.
So we'll see how that goes. Earlier, what I was referencing, not so much the UNC game, we figured out that was happening when after the fact, but they had pulled up the prior Maryland score, the women's Maryland score, not the men's, like what was going on live with the men.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, it finished and it's 5-9. I'm like, for one, I don't think it finished. And for two, there's no way the men only scored 5.
Yeah.
Lo and behold,
men only scored 11, but that was enough.
it was.
Syracuse men win 11-9 in the 1 versus 2 matchup over the Maryland Terrapins, one of the most highly anticipated regular season matchups in recent lacrosse history.
Yep.
Like, I don't remember a matchup more hyped in recent lacrosse history than this.
I mean, 1 versus 2 in the Dome with the history these two teams have had. Like, yeah. Friday Night Lights in the Dome.
That was Syracuse's first win over Maryland since 2009.
Yeah.
And we know what happened that season.
Yeah. So I was almost in the Steve is old thing. I was almost still on the hill when that went down. Oh God. So just looking ahead on that, we can go back to the Maryland game in a second, but now we begin the raid of the entire Ivy League.
Yeah, now you begin the stretch. I don't know what Harvard did in their latest games, but Harvard is up first in Syracuse's road stretch in terms of their Ivy opponents. They take down Providence in their season opener 10-4, and then they have another tune-up game on Tuesday against Colgate before they take on Syracuse. So Harvard hasn't been really tested yet. The big thing that Syracuse can hang their head on is that Princeton did lose to Penn State this past weekend, and that could have been set up for another 1 versus 2 matchup. That won't be the case right now because of Princeton losing to Penn State in pretty convincing fashion this past weekend.
Yeah, Princeton losing to Penn would not have been a surprise. Princeton losing to Penn State, slightly more surprising.
Yeah, and that's a good Penn State team as well. I believe they were 6 at the time when they played. I might be wrong on that, but it was still also to consider. Like the Penn State was 14. That's because Penn State earlier had lost to Villanova the prior week, which tumbled Penn State down the rankings. But Princeton, yeah, it's a good rebound for Penn State. And that game's at Princeton as well, so that's a big road win for Penn State, and Princeton can't quite defend their home turf to open up their schedule. Because remember, as you might expect, all the Ivy League opponents started this weekend. They haven't played games like the other schools, just because of the nature of the Ivy League schedule.
And what did Penn do? Because the NCAA website has them as a, I don't know, like a TBA.
I'm looking it up right now. They hung in tight with Georgetown, actually, but still lose 12-9.
Okay.
And that's a Georgetown team that's ranked number 5 in the nation. This is a Georgetown team that a lot of people are high on, mainly because of 2 high-profile transfers from Colgate.
Right. I remember we were talking about that, I know, last year.
The Connor brothers and Rory and Liam. And I believe one of them, it might have been Rory. Let me double check. It was indeed Rory. Rory Connor scored 7 goals in that game, which was insane.
So I guess going back to that Maryland game,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to watch it. Right now, I mean, that puts the Orange back where they belong as the presumptive number one in college lacrosse. What did we see out of this game that we need to take note of? Because I mean, Spallina obviously did Spallina things and had 4. I don't know. The box score is not showing right
Yeah,
on my screen, but
it was 4 goals for Spallina. That was his offense production.
yep, nothing on
The,
assists.
the big thing is that that's 4 goals for Spallina. A lot of the criticism, remember, a lot of the criticism on Joey Spallina is just that he doesn't show up in the big games. Obviously, he did against Princeton last year to
Right.
get Syracuse back to championship weekend, but he gets shut down by Maryland in the championship game, in the Final Four game.
Yep.
And like, there's a reason why Spallina is presumptive number 1 pick for the PLO when that time comes around. Like, and they started to show it. What they also started to show was that the lacrosse IQ is also picking up, and so Maryland right now has the best defender in the nation.
Yep.
It's arguable. Notre Dame will say that they do in Sean Light, but a lot of the consensus is that Will Schaller on Maryland is the number 1 defender in the nation, and he's the one who was covering Spallina, obviously, and shut him down in the Final Four game last year.
Yep.
What they did today, not today, obviously, what they did against Maryland is something that Syracuse did very similarly against Sean Light and Notre Dame last year in the regular season. If that game is such a fascinating study to watch. If you have time, I encourage people to watch that regular season game at the Dome, Syracuse versus Notre Dame men's lacrosse, from last season. Because what you see is that Syracuse is doing a lot of things, and Spallina himself is doing a lot of things to get him away from Sean Light, who again is probably the second best defender or the first best defender, depending on who you ask. Light was wearing 90 for Notre Dame. And Spallina's doing a lot of things off ball. His team is also doing a lot of things off ball to get Spallina away from Light. And because they did that with such efficiency, Spallina had a great game. And Syracuse wins that game against Notre Dame. They do the same here with Schaller. Spallina, 2 of Spallina's goals come when Schaller is not covering him. And the other 2 come with picks on Schaller. That Spallina's able to get a sliver in a moment free from Schaller.
Yep.
In order to score. So that was very, very, very important. What you also saw, I think, the first half star for a lot of people is Wyatt Hoddle. And Hoddle has impressive speed and dodging ability from the midfield. And
Yep.
when he inverts, that it adds another dimension to this offense where he can be a dodging threat as well. And it's not just Michael Leo, because Leo is going to be our main dodging threat. But now Hoddle has shown that he can just speed dodge by people because of just how fast he is offensively. Defensively, it's a great game from Syracuse as well. Maryland's 22 jersey is 1 for them. And
Okay.
the player wearing their 1 jersey, Eric Spanos, is limited to only 2 points and 2 goals. It's very, very impressive. This is a Maryland team that also only had 2 assists. I mean, Syracuse only had 3. Let's put
Right.
it that way. So, you just saw, how great both defenses were as well. So you got to give a lot of credit to the big guys in terms of Billy Dwan and Riley Figueres, who did an excellent job. It was interesting to also see them slide Chuck Kaczynski down, who is a natural long-set midfielder. But they slid him down to close defense so that he could play close D on Brandon. I believe it was Braden Erksa, one of their attackers, to cover him. So it was very, very interesting to see Syracuse defend well as well.
Yeah.
And because when you also look at it, The faceoffs end up even. John
Yeah.
Mullen dominates the first half. Maryland and Henry Dodge dominate the second half in terms of the faceoffs. So at the end of the day, the faceoffs end up 12-12 for both teams.
Yep.
One of the biggest differences in this game, Syracuse ends that game with 36 ground balls. Maryland only has 22. And Spolina himself has 5 ground balls. Like for your primary attackman to pick up 5 ground balls,
Yep.
That's impressive.
So one thing, just by the names you were ripping off, one thing I thought about and just realized is just about every one of those guys you mentioned that isn't Hoddle is a senior this year.
Yeah.
Including Jimmy McCool, too.
Yes. This is wild for Syracuse at championship or bust. Because so many of the key players on this team this year is a senior.
Yeah. That's Leo, Roa, Figueres, Spolina, Thompson, Kaczynski,
And consider the other interesting factor of, they had Thompson not at attack. They had him running out of the box in midfield.
Right.
I thought they could have done a bit more. And Clark was saying this on the broadcast. I thought they could have done a bit more to get Thompson a bit more involved in the game as well. He only had one assist, and they weren't running many picks with him. Just maybe nature of the matchup and whatnot, because obviously both teams were defending very, very well. And you see it in just the game. It was for a low scoring game, it was a very entertaining game as well.
That's one of my assistants in the pack was effectively glued to the phone.
Yeah.
And I could not get him off. I was like, I'll cover whatever you got to cover. But it seemed like it was quite the engaging matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, like by modern standpoints, 11-9 is low scoring, but that was a very, very entertaining game, high energy, and as Quentin always says, the Dome fans are very, very smart. So like you hear them cheering good defensive plays.
Right.
When Maryland players are starting dodges, but a defender is able to stick check him out and stop his dodge. Like you hear a great a cheer from the crowd because they know, hey, just stop the dangerous guy from dodging, which is important.
Yeah, there always is something to be said when the crowd is actually knowledgeably engaged.
Exactly. And at least with the hotbed schools in Lacrosse, you'll have knowledgeable, engaged crowds. What is rare is that you see a knowledgeable, engaged crowd of 10,000 fans.
I mean, you could just say what is rare is seeing a crowd of 10,000 fans.
That's this too
for a non-Memorial Day weekend game.
This is indeed true. I mean, Gary said that at the end of the game. Like, where else do you see 10,000 fans in February?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Something fun for us also. Joe Filardi, 2 ground balls.
There you go.
Filardi's been getting a lot of run time as a long stick midfielder, especially on face-off wings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he's starting to work his way more and more into the rotation.
Looking a little better than his other rotation.
Yeah, remember he was a 5-star in or at least a 4-star in his class rankings for lacrosse.
Right.
He was a top 100 recruit in lacrosse. Like, remember, yes, he's a walk-on for football. That's because he's scholarship for lacrosse.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seems to be we're gonna keep rolling in these multi-sport athletes in the Syracuse football program.
Absolutely, indeed. Not much to talk about football-wise. It's been unusually quiet, obviously, for football. Because we had the time. The big news that we have to talk about for Syracuse and just in general, I completely forgot about this, but we have to talk about it. The administrative changes that are happening at Syracuse.
Yeah.
2 big ones. The known big one and then the lesser known but still big one. The big one, obviously, that everyone knows, John Wildhack is retiring as athletic director effective July 1st, which means the two biggest decision makers at Syracuse are leaving July 1st. Kent Severud is leaving for Michigan,
Yep.
and Wildhack is retiring. In the same vein, senior associate deputy athletic director, I might have gotten the title mixed up, but Herm Frazier is also retiring, and he has, and I believe he's retired effective immediately as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Yeah. Well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is retired effective immediately.
Well, I mean, inherently, with a major administration change on the top end of the university, they probably want to make an impact on whatever their athletic director is doing, which makes the Wildhack thing make sense, kind of, as we mentioned. Herm leaving was kind of, it's one of those where it's like, it's about time, but it was also a surprise in my brain.
Indeed. Now, me being newer to the Syracuse athletics world in general, I don't have much knowledge as to what Herm's general duties were. Steve,
Yep.
obviously you know a bit more, but from what I know, Herm was still a major important piece in the athletic department, which is why his retirement is just as impactful as Wildhack's retirement.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they replace, like you said, the top two athletic specific decision makers, or highest ranking officials, how they actually cope with that, or what they replace it with. That said, Herm's been around Syracuse for a long time. Probably what, 15, 20 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I believe it was he joined around the
Maronish?
the later end of Daryl Gross's tenure, I think.
Okay.
15 years at Syracuse. So,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's been around for a while. He knows the system, he knows what was going on. But you get new blood at all these different facets, and what's that going to make it look like moving forward? Because Herm has been through a couple of ads, a couple of football coaches. Like, he definitely was tied into the football program a bit.
The big thing for us, our listeners, because this is a topic that ever since before we came on this podcast has been talked a lot about.
Yep.
Herm was the main person in charge of football scheduling.
Yeah. So I guess it's going to be a bit before we see any change in that, though, because Herm's had his imprint on everything through 2029. I don't think we have anything
around
scheduled
that,
for 2030, but somewhere in the late 2020s, we still have all those games that were scheduled. So outside of something weird like the Army situation happening, we're relatively set on some of these. I'd assume by Christian's face, he's pulling up FB schedules to find out exactly what and where we have there.
Yeah, so obviously 2026 is set.
Yep.
2027, Penn State and Connecticut, or 2028, Penn State. 2029, Toledo, Notre Dame, and Morgan State. 2030, no games, and then 2 more future games for Notre Dame.
So there's actually a lot more work to do than I thought there was.
Yeah, you still have 2 more. At this point, you have 1 more non-conference game that you need to schedule for 2027.
Yep.
Luckily, that can be an FCS opponent because you have Penn State and UConn,
yep,
which fulfills the ACC requirements of having at least, I believe it's either 10 or, I believe it's 11, 10 or 11 FBS opponents and one Power 4 opponent.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You also fulfill most of that with 2028 because you have right now just Penn State.
Right.
2029, as long as everything's there, is actually pretty set as well, which is Toledo, Notre Dame, and Morgan State. But the big ones are getting a game for 27, getting 2 games for 28, and filling all the games for 2030.
Yeah, so that's, right off the bat, they've got to be, cooking pretty good on like having something going for scheduling already. For also when Christian was wrapping those off, for anyone who wasn't in the know, as of December, the ACC did move to a 9-game league schedule. So, like the opponents were announced for next year, right? To my knowledge.
They haven't been fully announced for next year. They just have they just announced the 9-game schedules. They also the big thing that was announced was
that's when that's going in is 27, right?
no 26. It's starting next year because remember that was
really?
Syracuse took out the Toledo game and put in NC State away.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So that's starting effective immediately. The big thing is obviously because the ACC has an odd number of teams. Not every team can play 9 conference games, and also because of other contracts with out of conference opponents. So what they've also announced is that Syracuse in 2030 will be one of the teams that will play 8 conference games instead of 9.
That 2030 schedule that has 0 game schedule for it.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is why I brought up 2030 as well.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting. And then, as we talked about, depending on how this basketball team finishes, the new AD is going to have his work cut out for him with that sport too. Just
in general, Steve, because a lot of people have opinions on this, and it's natural to have opinions on this right now. What have you made in general of John Wildhack's tenure at Syracuse, which starts in 2016?
Okay.
Yeah, it started in 2016. Remember, 2015 was the 11 months of Mark Goyle before he leaves for Minnesota.
Yes. Yep. It seems like a mixed bag that didn't totally deliver on what I think was expected out of a relatively high profile, even though he wasn't experienced as an AD hire. I think there was a lot of hype around when he came in as a decent hire, especially in the situation with Coyle bailing to go to Minnesota. I really don't want to say it was a relative neutral-ish thing. Like he bungled the Boeheim retirement thing. Dino had the flash in the pan, and then he kind of rode him a little longer than expected, but he did nail the Brown hire. He brought in FLJ, so that helps that. I don't know. It's really a very, very mixed bag.
Big thing also is that Wildhack oversees the renovation of Lally. Brings in the Lally family, and in an interview with Syracuse.com, believe it was Lord Lally, he said, "Hey, we're probably not investing in Syracuse as much as Wildhack was an AD and the relationship that they had with Wildhack." So like you get Lally, rebuilt and renovated, especially the football wing of Lally now.
Yep.
And then, you oversee the dome renovations as well.
Yeah.
For Wildhack, which were very, very important. Like and I like what Syracuse.com put out, which is there was a lot of quiet good things that Wildhack did. But unfortunately, he's probably going to be most judged for the negative thing that was most loud, which is right now the decline of the Syracuse men's basketball program.
Right. Yeah, it might be one of those where the stuff that he did won't immediately be apparent. At what point, it's not now that we're currently reaping the benefits of those renovations. It's going to be, the next recruiting classes and things coming in, and whether or not that moves the needle at all. And if it does, then that's another feather in his cap. But by then, because we're in the society we're in, we'll have already forgotten about that happening and where it all came from and all that. So
it'll be interesting to see how Syracuse moves forward in terms of their next athletic director. Do you think it should be someone like Wild Hack again, who has a certain experience in the athletic worlds that's not necessarily directly from college athletics, or should it be someone who has had significant college athletic experience before? And especially,
thinking like maybe bringing in a P4 AD or a
exactly.
G4 AD or like a P4 associate or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Or do you go for someone like Wild Hack, who, again, for those who don't know, Wild Hack was a ESPN executive before moving over to Syracuse?
I mean, that's a tough one. My gut and my brain says bring in we've moved the needle on some of the off the field stuff and the quiet stuff that we're talking about. Bring in an athletic focused guy or gal and make that your next move, but don't hesitate to bring in, an advisor that might know some of that stuff that Wild Hack does, or have some of that, some of those connections that may have been used. We've done special advisors all the time. Maybe the next version of Herm is more of a off-field focused type guy, while the AD is more of an athletics focused. I think there's a balance that needs to get struck.
So, and a lot of people have said this online, the next months for Syracuse are about to be very, very defining because they need to get this right.
Yep. And we said that about football. And after the first season, it definitely felt like that was right. After last season, we are where we are, but there's still some promise there. If we can land the plane on the AD, that probably also helps stabilize some of the other things that are a little wonky in the Syracuse sportsosphere.
Indeed. One quick final thing to tap it all off. Congratulations, Jack Stonehouse. You are a NFL Scouting Combine invitee.
Punter University.
The next great Riley Dixon. For that, we'll end it here on this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. Thanks to Steve, as always, for joining me. We hope to get Andy back on here next week very, very soon. As always, we record these around Sunday at around 8-ish and upload them, hopefully, at around midnight on Monday, between Sunday and Monday, on your podcast platform of choice. You can catch the VOD on our YouTube page, subscribe there, and leave a like and a comment while you can as well. Disloyal Idiots on YouTube. And if you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, be sure to leave a like, rating, review, subscription, and allow us to expand the Ottoman Empire in our reach. Going to be an interesting few months, Syracuse Athletics coming up. For that, we say go Orange.
Go Orange.